The Spot Track Podcast, talking sports contracts, the salary cap, and business of sports.
Welcome to the SpotTrack.com podcast. It's been a while. A couple weeks. I'm Kevin Sylvester along with Paul Peck and the founder of SpotTrack.com, Mike Giannetti. I'm just going to put it all on Mike. Where the hell you been? No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, right? 2 weeks feels like a month.
He's been in the bunker. He's been in the bunker updating all of the new developments of contracts in the NFL and everything.
I haven't. So I've previously mentioned that my wife has a birthday that falls in NFL free agency week every year, right?
Right.
So that's always a nightmare.
Which I've mentioned is selfish.
The birthday or the free agency week is a nightmare?
Yes, but now, I've now got a brother-in-law, her brother, who gets married during the NFL draft. So they've hit all the check boxes in terms of making my life complicated in terms of updating SpotTrack's numbers. But we had a great weekend out in Napa Valley, so we were kind of multitasking in terms of getting the NFL up to speed and things like that. But we're happy to be back here.
Did you have specific period of times where you could check your phone?
It was tough. It was tough. I was watching the draft sort of en route to Napa Valley, so I was keeping up with it there. We had Scott on a couple weeks ago. Scott did all the legwork in terms of getting these players updated this weekend, so big thanks to him. But I was sort of off the grid, if you're asking.
Yeah, well, Paul and I know this deal because we often overhear our family say, "Is Paul okay? He's having stomach issues. He's been in the bathroom for a long time."
I have to make myself clear when I walk in a room. Like, I'm going to be ignoring most of you.
Exactly.
This is, I'm doing homework.
Boy, Mike's gone to the bathroom 4 times.
I don't even do that. I don't even hide anymore. I just sit there with my phone.
Okay,
so.
well,
yeah, I'm the introvert.
All right, so obviously the draft is concluded. There's all this influx of new players in the league, and what I want you to explain to people a little bit, and they can go on SpotTrack.com right now, bring up round by round salary projections. Frankly, I've covered the league for 30 years, and I don't understand how the rookie draft pool works. So explain to everybody how it all works and what it ultimately means for the kind of money that because guys are going to start signing here in the next week or so.
Oh, yeah, it'll come in fast. So really what happened with that 2011 CBA is the rookie wage scale kind of came together, which basically meant you're going to get a slotted contract based on where you're drafted. So, Baker Mayfield at 1 is going to get substantially more than Josh Rosen at 10. That's just how it works.
And it's not a quarterback thing anymore.
No.
It's strictly based on where they're drafted.
That'll give Josh Rosen something else to carry on.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right. Nine mistakes, but a lot more millions. Right. So that's the discussion we had about Saquon Barkley and how he, him going as high as he's going means he's going to be one of the highest paid running backs in football. And I threw a tweet out, mid glass of wine this week that, his $31 million that we're projecting to be fully guaranteed is the second most all time for a running back. All time.
Wow.
Adrian Peterson got $36 million guaranteed, a bunch of years back with Minnesota, and there hasn't been $32 million since fully guaranteed to a running back.
And
That's
it has
incredible.
nothing. It all has to do with him being second
That's
overall.
It's the second slot.
So now here, as I'm looking at your list here, this jumps out at me. Baker Mayfield projected total value of his contract 32.6, and then Sam Darnold 30.2, Josh Allen 21.1, Josh Rosen 17.5.
Yeah, it
so
drops
there's
off.
a $15 million difference between the 4 quarterbacks.
It's a big deal. So 1 through 10 is a big deal for the total contract. It's a big deal for that 5th-year option, if you can talk about that. So all these first rounders get basically fully guaranteed money. I mean, there's going to be a couple guys at the end of the round that may have some 4th years that aren't guaranteed in terms of that salary. But for the most part, big signing bonus, fully guaranteed. They're locked in. They also get the 5th-year option. But that breaks down sort of differently. 1 through 10 gets a higher 5th-year option than 11 through 32. The 11 through 32s basically get a transition tag that 5th year. That's how that works financially. So you want to be in the top 10 because there's a big cliff in terms of the total value after that, and you want to be there for that 5th-year option as well.
I heard something interesting said that I had never thought about in relation to Lamar Jackson. The Ravens trading up to take him 32nd was a very smart business decision by the Ravens, because now your potential starting quarterback is locked up for 5 years instead of 4. If he goes 1 pick lower, they only have him for 4 years instead of 5.
And I even look at it 1 year further. When you're doing that,
because of the franchise tag.
That's right. And we can even say 2 years now, right? After Kirk Cousins, right? So
it actually makes sense to trade up into the first round, particularly if you're going to draft a quarterback.
Think about what we're talking about here. We're talking about a quarterback that could be under control for 7 years. That's a career. That's a career right now. I mean, you're talking about one contract. If you're, especially with the running back. I mean, if you're going to give Saquon Barkley the Le'Veon Bell treatment, he's done. He's one and done with the Giants. 7 years.
That is that's remarkable.
We were going there, and that's my concern. We talked about this a few weeks ago with this franchise tag. It's not being used as a placeholder anymore. It's being used as a 6th and 7th year option in some cases, and that's the term of these careers now.
I want to talk about Baker Mayfield, and we'll use
one more before you get to that. One more point. I think fans should understand now that when you look through the years and say, "Oh, there were 4 quarterbacks drafted, 5 quarterbacks in the first round, the most since the 6 that went in 1983," that's only going to continue for the reasons that you said. Teams will draft quarterbacks higher to get them into the first round to be able to lock them up under longer-term contracts. So I would suspect in years moving forward, we will probably average somewhere between 3 to 4 quarterbacks taken in the first round, regardless of their talent levels. If they're a mid-second rounder and you want them, it makes sense to trade up to get them in the first round.
Everything you're saying is absolutely correct. And just to get a little bit more specific, it is the rookie wage scale in a nutshell is a slotted contract number. It slides with the salary cap, right? So every year that salary cap goes up a percentage, and we base our projections based on that percent increase, right? So that other GMs are doing this too, right? So they're looking 2-3 years down the draft at their drafts, understanding positionally what they may need based on what they've got currently. Let's a couple teams, the Patriots with their quarterback next year. They kind of know, if they're going to be good, that they're going to be in the late 20s, then in the 30s in terms of their draft pick. They can project already what their 4-year contract for a quarterback they may be getting is going to be at, and they can budget for it. So not only do players know what they're going to get based on their slot, and we can kind of look at it on SpotTrack and attest the draft pools from it, but teams are able to use this as a future financial planner to kind of know, if we're going to be a late 20 pick, which we anticipate, 10 wins, we can use this and basically say, this is all we're going to need to get our quarterback locked in for 4+ years and really understand how we can build our team around that. So it's a really powerful situation that the CBA has put these teams in. You got to remember, guys like Sam Bradford, 9 years ago, I'm drawing a blank on when he was actually drafted. He pulled out
the last year previous to the CBA.
Oh yeah, 2010. He was $55 million guaranteed as the number 1 overall pick. You were sinking an investment into a quarterback in the first round, 8 years ago. Whereas now, not only is it value, but it's a long-term value, which you've said here, with 6-7 years.
Or it's easier to get out of if it's a bust.
That way, too.
It's easy. And the last thing before you get to your Mayfield point, just in looking at your numbers, Lamar Jackson will projected to guarantee $9.5 million as the 32nd overall pick, compared to Baker Mayfield's $32.6 as the number 1 overall pick, even though he's only the 5th quarterback.
Well, and with Baker Mayfield, so at SpotTrack.com, you have the projected contracts.
Yep.
And total value of Baker Mayfield's rookie guy. This is the 4 years on
4 years.
4 years in the contracts, $32 million, 21 in a signing bonus, and pretty good for a guy who's walked on twice, by the way. Been drafted number 1 overall. The cap number for this year, 5.9. If he's a starting they drafted him number 1 overall.
Yeah.
But whatever,
By
the Browns, for 4 years, the Browns are going to spend under $10 million a year on their number 1 quarterback. And that is how you win and build a team in the National Football League, right? If you can get the cheap labor for the first 4 and 5th year.
Yeah, that's where you want to be. That 5.9 is going to rank 31st right now among quarterbacks. So, if he's anything of a player this year, whether he plays or not, he's never going to be a problem for their cap in terms of the next, let's minimum 3 years. He can be extended after the 3rd year. So if he's throwing the ball through the roof and 5,000 yards and 30 touchdowns, he's not going to be sitting on this 4th year, and the 5th year option will be moot because he'll get his $150 million. But if he's an average quarterback, if he's an Alex Smith type quarterback, a guy game manager type situation, those guys can be extremely valued cheap for 4 years, even from the first round, from the first overall pick.
By the way, were you guys surprised that Mayfield was number 1? I was. I thought Darnold was going to be the guy.
I was very surprised. I as we've discussed with our big hot takes, we were dead wrong on everything.
That's true. I got 2 right in my mock draft.
Oh, you went back and looked?
Yeah. At BuffaloSportsPage.com, I got 3 right. And the 2 I got right
3 out of 5?
3 out of 32 right player to right team.
I got 2.
Kevin got 2.
Players to right team. It was Sam Darnold to the Jets and Quentin Nelson to the Colts. Those are the two that I got.
I
right.
believe,
All
like
right.
the big shots, Daniel Jeremiah had like 7, and that was the most out of anybody. So how useless mock drafts can be.
What we know is we know nothing.
Yeah,
That's
and
what
the
we know.
last thing the last point that jumps out at me as I'm looking at your numbers, Mike.
Yeah.
Lamar Jackson is the last pick in the first round, projects to have $9.5 million guaranteed. One pick later, first pick of the second round, $2 million less for Austin Corbett.
Yeah, everything falls
That's
off.
crazy.
Yeah,
One pick difference.
Yeah, the guarantees fall off. The ability to move falls. I mean, yeah, you're talking about a situation where the team benefits and the player benefits to be in that top 32 more than any other round, obviously. There's a little bit of wiggle room in the third round. That's sort of where the numbers get a little screwy. Every year we kind of see some guys higher and some guys way lower. It's sort of based on their position. Honestly, the positions get paid a little better there, but from there, it's really, really strict. I mean, anything fourth round and greater, as we've seen with like Dak Prescott's and Kirk Cousins, it's unbelievable value, less than $1 million on the bonus, and it's neat to see it all on the tracker like we have it, because you can really kind of see the differences quickly. And if you just sort by quarterback. And just see the positions and how the cliff just falls off. Yeah. It's unbelievable.
Well, how about as you're talking, I'm scrolling.
Yeah.
Mr. Irrelevant, Trey Quinn, 256 guaranteed to projected to be guaranteed $2.5 million overall for the length of his contract compared to Baker Mayfield at number one in his 32.
That 2.4 is actually not guaranteed. Just the 70,000 bonus is guaranteed.
That's right. You got to make the team.
Yeah, that's it. Sure. That's it.
Yeah.
So
it's amazing when you look at the numbers and just see you're at the fate, of where you get picked and
how about Josh Allen? Right, there was the Bills said they're willing to move to 5, right, with Denver to get him. They ended up getting him at 7, and had the Bills moved up to 5, it's a difference of $6 million.
$6 million.
That's amazing.
It is.
So they saved themselves $6 million.
Or a guy who drops for some reason. That's a major financial hit. If you're projected to go in the middle of the first and you don't go to the bottom of the second.
I always cringe when I see these social media situations come out the day of or day before the draft. The Josh Rosen situation.
Josh Allen, yeah.
Sorry, we've seen it every year. We've seen it now 3-4 years in a row where somebody has baggage and they wait until a day or two before and they jump it out, because I know that's going to happen. I know they're going to drop spots, and I know what that means financially. It's a major impact to drop.
All right, let's talk about impact and the impact of running backs on the Patriots offense this year, because the Patriots did not draft a quarterback in the first round. Many thought they were. They loaded up on they have 2 first-round picks like Buffalo did to move up to get a quarterback. They did not, and they draft Sony Michel, the running back from Georgia. Shocking everybody. They didn't need a running back.
They didn't need a running back. We know they need a quarterback. They didn't address that. I think that's the most glaring, obvious point here.
They needed offensive linemen, too.
They needed a left tackle. They needed quite a few pieces. They needed a cornerback to shore it up. I believe they addressed that a couple of times.
Third round they did, yes.
I was extremely shocked to see them go high for a running back first round. I was fully expecting them to trade out of that pick, because that's what they do. So when they stayed and then took a running back, he's a great back. I mean, we've seen him in college. We know where he's coming from. To me, the question isn't is it a good pick? The question is this a sign of things to come? Is this a situation where Bill Belichick is going to be changing that offense a bit? He's got a 41-year-old quarterback who maybe doesn't like him that much right now, and certainly isn't a long-term option. But they didn't address that. What they did is they said we're going with the running game. They've got 6 viable running backs on this roster right now. That's not going to last through the summer. I can guarantee you that. But look at this is a direct shot at somebody, whether it's the offense as a whole, whether it's what Bill Belichick thinks he might need to win this year. I mean, maybe this is a situation where he's just going to load up that running game because he might need that as a plan A, and hope that the passing game can really do what it's always done. But to me, it's a shot at Brady in terms of what that roster currently looks like. The wide receiver, they lost Brandon Cooks. They didn't do much to beef up the wide receiver role. Maybe there's a Dez Bryant in their future. I don't know. We'll talk about that. But it certainly seems like this is a shift in that offensive pattern.
Well, I'll agree with the shift part. It may not be a shot, but it could be a shift and to help Brady, to take some pressure off of him in throwing the football all the time, and to be able to run the football some more.
But is that something Brady's capable of doing? Is he capable of being a 20 pass guy?
Not going to like it.
Right?
I mean, Brady's capable of doing whatever he believes he needs to do to win, but I think they've been such a pass-heavy offense. Yeah. And when I say that, it's mostly passes to the running backs in a lot of cases and the tight ends as it is to the wide receivers. Here's my connect-the-dots conspiracy theory on all this. By not addressing the future of their quarterback position, does this give us an insight into the timeline for Bill Belichick? Did he just say, you know what, one more year for me and it's somebody else's problem? I don't want to have to. I'm all in it for now. I'm not going to draft a quarterback that will be ready, or I'll make the same mistake where I think I'm going to have him ready in 2 years, and Brady doesn't want to stop playing in 2 years. To me, I think you could look at this and say this is Belichick saying, you know what, somebody else is going to worry about replacing Tom Brady. It's not going to be me.
It's hard to argue with that, and really, I sort of said it was a shot at Brady, but maybe it's the exact opposite. Maybe it's. We're putting all of our eggs in Brady's basket. You know what I mean? Yeah. We're going to ride this out together, right?
We don't know when that finish line is for Brady. I mean, logic will tell you that it's got to be coming soon. Mm-hmm. Guys just don't do what he does at his age, but guys don't win MVPs and at age 40 either. So at somewhere along the line, someone has to logically say he might be one more year, and either he gets hurt or his arm falls off, or he says, I'm done and I don't want to do it anymore.
That's when Peyton Manning won his last Super Bowl with Denver, right? Well, he won 2. Super Bowl with Denver. How much did he do with his right arm?
He was a shell of himself.
Right. He handed the football off, and they played great defense to win.
Well, financially speaking, we can show you this. The 31st pick for Sony Michel will bring about a $9.5 million contract for 4 years, which is $22 million less than what the Giants will pay Saquon Barkley. So,
wow,
if he's anything even near what Barkley ends up being, it's going to be just another great draft pick from the New England Patriots.
Great point.
Really how it's going to be.
Because is the gap that big? The gap between Baker Mayfield and Lamar Jackson is greater than the gap between Saquon Barkley and Sony Michel.
It's exactly the argument that some people said it made no sense to take Saquon Barkley second overall, because you could get a guy who could give you 98% of what Saquon does at the bottom of the first round.
But if that's the guy you want, you get him.
Well, and if he's a great player, I think sometimes you can overthink that. And you say, he's a great player, he'll make us better, he makes Eli Manning better, he extends his career, let's take him and not overthink this. But from a very analytical and logical standpoint, as we've clearly pointed out, among the best running backs in the NFL last year were 2 guys taken in the 3rd round, and that was Kareem Hunt and Alvin Kamara.
That's right.
There weren't a lot of great wide receivers in the NFL draft, and there's still a receiver out there who was great when he came out, and I think he's still pretty good, is Dez Bryant. Does not have a home yet. Why does he not have a home yet? I'll talk about where we think he's going to end up, but the money's got is money the issue, or do you think teams are waiting for the draft?
Money's the issue. The offers that he obviously hasn't liked at all. Anything I've heard has been pretty low ball. I know.
Is it a 1 year thing? Our team and is Dez willing to take a 1 year prove it deal? And because of the timing, I heard some chatter about Dez might be willing to do a 1 year deal.
Baltimore, from what I heard, offered a multi-year at decent money. And I believe Dez Bryant is looking for 1 year. I believe Dez is out there just to say, I'm going to take a Tyrann Mathieu look, a little less money on a good team, just to show that if the pieces are around me, I can play still. And then he's going to go and get a 2 or 3 year deal at a really good pace from there. So to me, it's all about the destination, and he's going to live in that 6 to 10 million mark. It's kind of tough to value him based on what he's looking for, because the better teams just won't be able to afford him, at what he's worth at around 11 million. So I'm looking at that Tyrann Mathieu situation as pretty much right exactly where Dez Bryant should land. But let's talk about it. I mean, there's some destinations that really make sense, and I think we just talked about maybe one of the favorites.
New England.
Yeah,
sure.
I think that's going to be on the short list. They've got a little bit of money to work with. Like I said, it's not going to take a ton to get him there.
Randy Moss.
I just was going to say, are there parallels to the Randy Moss thing? You're brilliant, Kevin.
Of course.
You can repeat that if you want.
Let's say it again. I think the Patriots are the destination. Probably many are speculating that will happen. I think it's perfect. I can't find a team that makes more sense in terms of the ability to win, the ability to pay, the ability to get the most out of him. So, that to me, that's a no-brainer. It's just the only angle I'd take otherwise would be, does he want to stay in the NFC and sort of have a shot to get back at the Cowboys this year?
The other two teams, well, that's one, the Giants,
That's short-sighted if you ask me.
Not from him.
Yeah,
Well,
but I said
not
that's
from
where
him.
his agent needs to say, you got to not worry about that.
That's
the
right.
Giants were interesting because, he's working out with Odell Beckham Jr., and when I immediately saw those two and thought of those two together, I thought of Ocho Cinco and Terrell Owens with the Cincinnati Bengals.
Yep.
When they played together for the 1 year, like, wow, what a formidable duo that you could have at wide receiver. But that may not be working out. The Jets could be an interesting.
Well, you start to get into
situation,
teams
right?
that have
Money.
bad wide receiver
And
core
money.
and money, and you're talking about the Jets and the
Right.
Bills and some of those other teams that could use him strictly because there isn't anybody better on their teams right now.
And they have rookie quarterbacks, and you want them to throw to somebody.
Yeah, but
you
do
know?
you want Dez Bryant around with a rookie quarterback with his volatile
Yeah, I know, but but you look at Baker Mayfield in Cleveland, he's gonna be like, oh, this is great. Like, he's got people to throw to.
Assuming he's still the same Dez Bryant, and I don't think he is.
No, I'm talking about who's already in Cleveland now.
But I wouldn't count them out. I'm not going to count the Browns out because of who they have. And I think, to your point, Paul, I think if a good agent right now is looking Dez Bryant in the face and saying, we can't go somewhere and be a number one because we're not a number one. We're going to get exposed if we go somewhere and take too much money to be a number one wide receiver. We need an arsenal around us and a quarterback can get us the ball. If he likes Baker Mayfield, that's a really nice brand new arsenal. There's nobody there who's going to have, Gordon's
Well, they got
head is up and
Jarvis
down.
Landry that they signed.
But
they have Josh Gordon and Coleman. That's their wide receiver core at the moment.
I like that everybody there is sort of new. Nobody's kind of, Gordon's been there, but he's been gone.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Everybody's sort of kind of feeling out that situation. So for Dez to come in, he'd be just like everybody else. It'd be sort of a core that's coming together at the same time with Mayfield and with Tyrod Taylor. Same situation. But I'm not counting them out. They've got money to burn, still almost $70 million in cap space. Like you said, there's a little bit of an establishment there in terms of what receivers to go with him. But look if he wants to stay in the NFC, there's a team that I've read a few times here, and they've been standing out to me. They got rid of a really important receiver. They've got a really good quarterback. And I think the Green Bay Packers have to be on this list. They have to be, because Aaron Rodgers has to be pissed, right? He's got to be pissed right now at everything that's happened over the last 2 months. And if that guy's hanging there and he's looking for, a team that can win and doesn't need a ton of money to get there, if I'm Aaron Rodgers, I'm being extremely vocal internally about this right now, because that's a guy that can make us better.
Yeah, because they lost Jordy Nelson. Randall Cobb is kind of on the tail end of his
Should have
career.
been cut, in my opinion.
Devontae Adams is their number one guy.
Yeah.
But it does. It makes a lot of sense.
You've got Jimmy
they signed Jimmy
Graham
Graham,
in fold
so and I can't remember without looking it up who the rest of their wide receiver core is.
Exactly.
Other than them drafting Equanimous St. Brown late in the draft.
Way to work that.
holy
David Paul.
cow.
Love that one.
He's
Hey,
been
how
working
about
on
He's got it
that
written
one.
on his hand.
How about speaking of Dez Bryant? Did you ever hear anything about why the timing was what it was with his release? And it seems ironic that the Cowboys doing that to Dez are now getting it done to them, with Jason Witten likely retiring this late in the game to go into the TV booth.
Unbelievable what Witten's about to do to this team. Because I don't know if you even know, their other tight end had to be retired for injuries, James Hanna. So they lost two tight ends. I'm assuming, like you're assuming, that he's going to take the ESPN gig. But yeah, they've lost two tight ends in 2 weeks. They released their top wide receiver.
And then everybody thinks the Eagles traded up one pick ahead of them to scoop the guy named Dallas on them in the draft.
I like that. It's extremely. I have not heard a hard and fast reasoning for the weight game. My thinking was they were really trying to wait out and see if they could make this work. I think they were expecting Dez's team to come and basically say, we want to be here. What's it going to take? Never happened, because from what I read, they didn't offer the pay cut. They never said we need to restructure to keep you here. My thinking was that it was either they were going to do it or this was going to happen, and it happened. So now here we are, and it's a bad look for everybody. It's a bad look for Dez, although he should be just fine in the long run here. But yeah, they are in a bad. Let's flip to the Cowboys, because that's the situation we should talk about with this Witten. They obviously did not see this coming, because they restructured his contract 2 weeks ago. They converted almost $4.5 million into a signing bonus. It's something I'm efforting to figure out if that's actually going to stay. But generally, if it's processed, it stays. So
Stays on the cap.
yeah, I mean, yeah,
But he'd have to return it.
it can be adjusted next year if they force him to pay it back, which obviously they would. They'd have to go through some arbitration to make that happen. But yeah, it's going to stay on their cap this year regardless, because it did process, and it's going to happen before June 1st. So it's going to be a huge dead cap hit to go with Dez and Tony Romo. So they've really backed themselves into a corner with their short-term game here, and then dumping Dez and now Witten out of the fold. So it's a bad look for them and a bad cap situation as well.
Well, if it is the ESPN thing, obviously he auditioned. Obviously it went really well.
Yeah.
They must think he's Tony Romo Jr.
I also think a lot of people said no. I think they had better options, and those guys
Kurt
said
Warner's
no.
name was mentioned.
Peyton
Manning's name was mentioned. Joe Thomas supposedly admitted he was in the mix there. I don't know whether they ever offered it to him or not. I think they're totally going the Tony Romo right off the field, right into the booth route, because it worked so well for CBS, brought him
and
so
best
much
friends,
attention.
Right? Those two are best friends.
Correct.
I mean, they've got the same kind of conversational
Well,
speak. So.
And if you aren't sick of the Cowboy perspective, then you might have Witten, Aikman, and Romo as your main color guys.
And the one who's been doing it the longest may not be the best of those three.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, Romo is
phenomenal.
He's outstanding.
Great. Aikman, he's Troy Aikman, Hall of Famer, but I know. I just, he's good, but I wish he was with somebody other than Joe Buck. They're too similar to me. Am I wrong with this?
I think they're both very good, very solid, if that's what you mean by that.
They're both solid. Okay, solid. I just think you need more than solid nowadays. What was Witten's cap number?
Yeah, the cap was high because they had restructured him twice already. The cap was set to be, what do we have it here? About 3.4 million, but he was only set to make about 1.7 million in cash.
All right, so
and that's the number to worry about here.
Right. So the ESPN was paying Gruden about $6 million.
Supposedly offered Witten four.
Right. Well, that's a no-brainer right there.
Unless Dallas comes up with the money.
Well,
right.
But he's probably thinking long term. This is
how many more years is he going to play?
Right, how many more years are going to play? How good are we going to be? He's already had arguably. His career is up there, right? Jason Witten's had an unbelievable career, and he can now have an unbelievable career in broadcasting. He can do it as long as Troy Aikman's been doing.
So here's something else you need to start working into Spot Track is the surprise retirement of active players to go into the TV business, because if it goes this way with Witten, it's 2 years in a row that it's going to happen, and it makes a serious, the fact that it's the same team, it puts them in a serious cap situation.
Let's keep in mind that he is going to have to pay back that $4.7 million. So his first year at ESPN is going to be free, essentially.
Right. Well, maybe they pay back part of it. He's got, by the way, over 1,100 receptions.
Yeah.
Over 12,000 yards.
First ballot Hoff,
and 68 touchdowns. I don't know if he's first ballot.
I don't think he's first ballot. I feel like he was always really, really good, but never dynamic like some of the other tight ends who would be in Hall of Fame conversations, like Antonio Gates and Tony Gonzalez. Yeah. I don't know. Was Jason Witten ever dynamic?
And 110 catches in 2012 for over 1,000 yards. He had 2 years where he had 90. He had
Did he have the impact that Gronk and Gates and Jimmy Graham for a while and Tony Gonzalez did when they played?
I'll tell you what. I'll take his career over Jimmy Graham's.
Me too.
Longevity, no question. No question.
I think he didn't stand out as much because he had a wide receiver with him all the time.
True.
Whereas the other teams were sort of built around the tight end position, and that's when it became generational.
Right.
But Witten always had an Irving or T.O. or somebody there to sort of. But to that point, he still had 100 catches.
What hurts him is he'll be retiring the same year as Antonio Gates.
Mm-hmm.
And because of Gates, Gates is a Hall of Famer.
Says he wants to play. I wonder if Gates signs somewhere else.
Gates is you look at eras. Gates is a Hall of Famer. Gronk's a Hall of Famer.
But is he?
How many
with the PEDs?
Gates?
Is he going in?
He's going in.
Gates is going in.
Even
we may have to wait on it, but he'll go in.
He'll go in.
I bet you Witten goes first. I bet you Witten goes first.
I'll say no.
Clean. He was a better advocate for the game. I bet he goes first.
Interesting.
I'll tell you this: his salary last year put him over as the number 1 highest paid tight end in the history of football.
Wow.
So there's your top paid tight end, Jason Witten.
Anything else jump out at you from the draft? Anything else that really surprised you before we wrap up here and move on to another sport here? Anything money related, pick related, future emphasis related?
Yeah, so we've kind of done a little 101 on how these rookie wage contracts work, but there's an important part to discuss because as you mentioned, they're going to start flying in here, and the ones that don't are going to be generally those first round picks. And the reasoning for it is what's called offsets. So offsets they're pretty easy, but they're complicated in terms of how each contract might work. It's essentially this. Generally, what happens with these first round contracts are they take some of that salary, which is slotted based on the pick, and they'll split it up into a roster bonus. And a player will get X amount guaranteed at front, and X amount will be guaranteed during training camp per that roster bonus. And the reasoning for it is, if we need to get out of this contract, we want to be able to get out in the spring and not have to pay that roster bonus and things like that. So they kind of split up the guaranteed base salary into a bonus that they can work with if they need to. And then the offset part of it is basically, all right, we're going to cut. Give me an example. We're going to cut Saquon Barkley after year 3, and he's got offsetting roster bonuses. So we're in March, and we want to get rid of him, in 2020. Let's say then he goes and signs a 1-year deal with the Dallas Cowboys, for the minimum $1.5 million, whatever it's going to be in 2 years. That $1.5 million then that Dallas pays him will not have to be paid or will not be on the cap of the New York Giants. That's the offset. The offset is take the money from one team and move it to the other so that the dead cap doesn't have to sit all with the old team. That's the fight. That's the only fight these teams really have with these high picks is any kind of leverage they can have in terms of guys who get hurt and can't play anymore, or guys who are just absolute busts. They want to be able to kind of control the guarantees money throughout the summer, with those offsetting roster bonuses, or if they go and sign somewhere else and they're released. So you're going to hear that term offsets a lot. That's sort of the 101 on it. And, we're happy to answer any more questions about that at SpotTrack on Twitter.
I got one for you here. We talked a little bit about Lamar Jackson. There's a lot of speculation that he's obviously going to eventually replace Joe Flacco. And looking at Flacco's numbers, I would say Joe Flacco's getting through this year and likely next year. And then that's probably where the Lamar Jackson era begins. Or can the Ravens get out of it after this year if they want to make that move?
Yeah, I'm not giving him next year at this point.
Even though he's $16 million on the cap?
Yeah, they can do that after. They can designate him a post-June 1st release. That would be 8-8 over the next 2 years in terms of the dead cap. And that saves them that saves them $18 million next year. So, they can go and rebuild that, the rest of that offensive line that they'll need to after that. In terms of next free agency in the draft. But I fully expect Joe Flacco, unless he comes back to Super Bowl Joe Flacco this year, to be on the roster bubble as of right now.
All right, we're going to move on to basketball and our contract of the week.
Time now for the contract of the week.
All right, we talk basketball. We won't talk LeBron James, but I do want to mention, Cleveland will be the last team in the East without LeBron James. He is incredible. What he did to win the series against Indiana in Games 5 and Game 7, just remarkable. If you didn't think LeBron James, I'd still take Jordan number 1. I'd take LeBron James number 2.
I heard a stat today, just to get this in there on LeBron because he deserves it. Throughout these playoffs, LeBron James has 3 times more points than the rest of the Cavs.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
What is going on? These are players. It's got to be coaching. In my opinion, it's either LeBron James himself or it's coaching. Because he cannot get the rest of this roster going. And there's some shooters in this team. There's some guys who can shoot the ball.
And the scary part about it is they've already won one series, and they may win a whole bunch more with getting nothing from anyone other than LeBron.
He's going to ride him as far as he can go. And if he does, it's going to be one of the greatest feats in NBA history, in my opinion, just because of the production and how one-sided it is. Yeah.
And when he and Kevin Durant play together, they will be unstoppable. But let's talk about
what an offseason we've got coming.
Yes, I can't.
Speaking of,
I love the NBA playoffs. It's been great. Let's talk about the contract of the week, and that's Kawhi Leonard.
Who?
Yes, Kawhi Leonard of the San Antonio Spurs.
My doctors have told me that I'm not supposed to talk about Kawhi Leonard's contract. That's a kind of a joke.
Okay.
There.
All right. Well, anyway,
that didn't really work very well.
Before we even talk about the contract, what is happening? What's going on here? We know nothing.
No,
about
there seems to be
nothing.
A very clear split amongst who's in charge.
This is Malcolm Butler's Super Bowl benching times 50 because players aren't talking, coaches aren't talking. Nobody's on social media has any answers for what this guy just disappeared off.
Is
one of the best
an issue with Leonard that nobody wants to talk about?
I was in San Antonio during that series against the Golden State Warriors, and I asked some of the locals, as you do when you travel, you want to talk to the locals and see what's going on, and many just think that he could have played, but didn't to keep himself healthy.
For what?
For free agency, for his next contract. But he's under contract.
He can opt out, but that's all? This is like sitting out a bowl game because the NFL's coming?
Got to be more to it than that. There has to be something going on. There has to be a rift. There has to be an ego play. There has to be something going on.
This is all why Greg Popovich lost his wife during the first round, so they had a game.
Yeah.
Terrible. There's a whole lot of stuff going on.
Maybe Kawhi wants to draw a line in the sand with Popovich. He's a dominating personality as much as there is any coach in the league. Maybe Kawhi wants to tell everybody that the players are in charge here, not Pop.
Has there been a coach in the NBA that's had a greater impact on his team than Greg Popovich? I don't think so.
Nope.
No way.
You know, you could say Phil Jackson, the Lakers.
Half the NBA coaches, you can't even name them.
Correct.
No way.
No, Greg Popovich is
and that, to
the
me,
best
that's the
coach.
most shocking part of this is that you've got this is all happening under that tutelage in this franchise. You know, this era of these Tim Duncans and these Tony Parkers and these guys who have just done it right for 15 years now, and now we're at this is awful. This is as bad as it's been. I mean, this is a guy who's just flat out quit on his team, and it's one of the best franchises in all of sports. So it's confusing. Look, financially speaking, it's pretty easy. He made $18 million this year. He's going to make $20 million next year. Then he can opt out of a player option. He's opting out of $21 million, which sounds crazy, but he can make $40. I mean, Steph Curry's making $40 right now. So obviously he's not happy about his money. That's obviously part of this. And obviously he doesn't want to be there, because if he wanted to be there, this wouldn't be happening. He'd be getting his next, $250 million extension with this franchise. So obviously he doesn't like where this franchise is going long term, and he doesn't like the pop of his situation, and he doesn't like anything happening because he's completely quit on the team. But we're at a position now where he's hurting his trade value as well. I mean, because any team that does trade for him knows that after $20 million next year, there's going to be $200 million on the table. That's what this guy is going to be worth in terms of production. But this mental side of it has to be extremely frustrating, right? From a GM standpoint, for somebody looking for this guy. There's going to be plenty of offers. Let's put that to rest.
Yeah. When healthy and on his game focused, I mean, he's as good as there is.
I don't know that
he's not as good as LeBron, but
But in terms of that position, I don't know that there's better. I mean, no. I think you put him in a situation where you want him with the ball. So I don't know how this is going to work. The funny thing is that San Antonio owns the rights. They're going to have to trade him to where they want. I mean, there's a kicker and there's things like that, but there's not a trade clause in terms of how we have things broken down here. So San Antonio owns the control. So it's not like he can go out there and sort of piggyback up with LeBron and Paul George and Durant and those guys and make a super team with him included. So the destinations are going to be somewhere San Antonio wants to send him, and I just think that this is a really bad look.
Sounds like the perfect New York Knick.
Yeah, you're right. Yes, you are.
I'm saying.
You couldn't be more right.
It sounds like the perfect New York Knick.
Well, that's the end of that conversation.
Yeah. By the way, all right, as we wrap things up, love that the Celtics and Sixers are playing each other, right? I mean, how good is that?
Those Celtics? Speaking of teams that are doing it right.
Doing it without Irving, without Hayward. Their two biggest acquisitions in the offseason. It's incredible what the Celtics are doing. Brad Stevens might, hey, Coach of the Year?
How do you not?
Right.
How do you not? I mean, he's doing with Boston what LeBron is doing with the Cavaliers. I mean, he's single-handedly putting 5 players on the court at the right time together and making this work. It's pretty unbelievable.
I'm upset the Greek Freak didn't advance to the second round, but
I don't think he didn't deserve to. I don't think that team's ready yet. That team needs work. That team needs Kawhi Leonard.
Ooh, you can see Kawhi with Giannis.
I don't know.
That'd be interesting. All right, that's going to do it for this edition of the SpotTrack.com podcast. Thanks for tuning in. Of course, you can always find all the information, all the contracts, the intrigue with the monies at SpotTrack.com. For Mike Giannetti and Paul Peck, I'm Kevin Sylvester. We'll talk to you next week.